The rain didn't stop. It poured endlessly, turning the battlefield into thick, sucking mud. Bodies lay scattered, human and alien, silent. Still cold, among them was one human soldier. Barely breathing, face half buried in the dirt. His name was James, a private with no medals, no glory, just pain. His right leg was broken, twisted at the wrong angle. His armor was cracked, his weapon jammed. And the rest of his squad was already dead or missing. He had dragged himself to this spot, hoping someone would find him, but hours passed. Then a full day and no one came. The buzz of flies filled the air. The sun disappeared behind black clouds. All James could think of was his mother's kitchen, the smell of stew, the warmth of a wooden chair, the sound of music playing from the radio. Now all he felt was cold, wet mud pressing into his back. His mind drifted in and out, flashes of gunfire and screams echoing in his ears. He was ready to die. Then something moved. A shadow fell over him. Heavy footsteps squelched in the mud. Slow and deliberate, James forced his eyes open, blinking through blood and water. A huge figure stood over him, at least 9 feet tall. Not human, that was for sure. She had silver skin, with soft violet markings running down her neck and arms. Her face was strong but oddly beautiful, with large golden eyes and small fangs peeking through her lips. Thick black hair was braided behind her shoulders, and her body was covered in something that looked like armor made of bone and silk. She crouched beside him, her glowing eyes scanning his injuries. James tried to lift his hand, but winced and coughed blood. The alien woman didn't attack, didn't speak in anger. Instead, she made a soft cooing sound, like a lullaby without words. She pressed her hand gently to his chest, and a warmth spread through his body. James gasped, feeling the pain numb slightly. She murmured something in a language he didn't understand, then reached beneath him with powerful arms and lifted him as if he weighed nothing. James panicked weakly, trying to speak. "Wait, don't, are you with them?" But his voice was too broken, and his body refused to fight anymore. The woman carried him through the mud like a baby, past burning tanks, shattered armor, and torn flags. As the wind howled around them, James could feel her heartbeat, steady and deep. For a moment, he felt like a child again, small, helpless, but safe in the arms of someone. His head leaned against her chest without thinking. Tears mixed with the rain on his cheeks, and then everything faded into black. When he opened his eyes again, he was no longer on the battlefield, but that was a different chapter. For now, all he knew was that something had saved him. Something not human, not enemy, a giant alien woman with eyes full of light, and arms that felt like home. James didn't open his eyes right away. He felt warmth before anything else. A soft surface under him, a light scent of herbs in the air. No screaming, no explosions, no cold wind, just warmth and silence. When his eyes finally fluttered open, he expected pain, but what he saw confused him more. Above him was a glowing ceiling of pale blue stone, lit with patches of softly glowing moss. Strange vines curved along the walls, and small stones floated gently in the air. It didn't look like a hospital or a human base. It looked alive. He tried to sit up, but a strong hand gently pushed him back. "Don't," a voice said, deep and low, but calming. He turned his head slowly and saw her, the same towering alien woman from the battlefield. Her silver skin shimmered. Under the cave's soft light, she knelt beside him, holding a steaming bowl of dark broth. Her golden eyes looked into his with something strange care, not the cold duty of a soldier or the indifference of a medic, but care. "Drink," she said, lifting the bowl to his lips. James hesitated, but his body was too weak to argue. The broth was thick and earthy, strange in flavor, but oddly soothing. As he drank, she wiped mud from his forehead using a damp cloth. Her hands were huge, but every motion was slow, gentle, like a mother with a newborn. He tried to speak. "Where am I?" he whispered, voice dry and cracked. She answered softly, "Safe." That was all she said. But somehow it was enough for now. James looked around again, realizing his gear was gone. His leg, which had been broken, was now wrapped in glowing fibers. Pulsing softly like a heartbeat, he was covered with animal furs, his wounds treated with glowing blue gel. He had never seen healing like this. Was it alien tech or something else? The woman began humming, her voice low and almost melodic. Not a song, not a language, but something that filled the air with comfort. James found himself closing his eyes again, not from pain, but from peace. How long had it been since he felt that? How long had it been since someone treated him like more than just a weapon? He woke again later, unsure how much time had passed. This time, the woman was nearby, sharpening something that looked like a bone knife. He watched her in silence, amazed at how she moved strong, but calm, when she noticed him awake. She gave a small nod, almost like a smile. "You are healing fast," she said. "That is good." James frowned a little. "Why did you help me?" She paused, then answered, "Because no one else did." That hit him harder than he expected. He stared at the fire between them. Watching it crackle, she continued, "You were thrown away. I know what that feels like." James didn't know what to say to that. This alien woman, this massive, terrifying creature, had saved his life, carried him across a battlefield, and now nursed him like a child. Not for reward, not for glory, but because she understood for the first time. In a long while, James whispered, "Thank you." She looked at him again, and something flickered in her eyes. Maybe pride, maybe sorrow, maybe both. "You are safe," she repeated, "and while you are here, you are mine." James blinked, unsure what she meant. But something about the way she said mine didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a promise. Days passed, or maybe weeks. Time didn't follow the same rules in the glowing cave. There was no sun or click only, the rhythm of her care. She would bring him food when he was hungry, clean his wounds when he slept, and when the pain returned. She would hum softly until it faded again. Her name was Vesha. She told him that one evening, while crushing herbs between smooth stones, James repeated it slowly. "Vesha," she smiled, just slightly. "Yes, that is me." He had questioned so many, but his body was still weak. Instead, he watched, listened, and learned. She moved through the cave like a guardian, graceful, but always alert. She taught him how to chew certain roots to dull the pain, how to drink glowing water from the cave walls, and how to breathe slowly when his chest tightened with old fear. Sometimes she would bring in strange animals, bird-like creatures with crystal feathers. She would feed them by hand, stroke their heads, then release them back into the wild. "They are not prisoners," she said once, "just visitors." James wondered if that was how she saw him when he could finally stand. She helped him walk. Her hand covered almost his entire side as she guided him step by step. Each time he stumbled, she caught him without scolding. When he fell and cursed himself, she only said, "Fall again, if needed, but stand stronger." James laughed once, breathless. "You sound like a drill sergeant," Vesha tilted her head, confused. "What is that?" He grinned. "Never mind, it's a compliment." They didn't speak the same language fully, but they didn't have to. Some things didn't need translation. Pain, laughter, care, loneliness, those were shared easily in silence one day. While James was resting near the cave entrance, he saw her standing in the rain, arms lifted too. The sky, water, streamed down her tall form as if she were part of the storm itself. She looked so powerful, yet peaceful, he called out. "Why do you do that?" She turned her head. Water dripping from her braids. "It is how I speak to the sky," she replied. I reminded I'm still here. James didn't know what to say, but he knew exactly how. That evening, she cooked something new, meat, roasted, over a blue flame. He hesitated, but Vesha nudged the food toward him. Good for strength. He took a bite, surprised at the flavor, smoky, rich, comforting. They ate side by side, and for a while, the war felt like a faraway dream. As his body healed, so did something else's trust. He started to tell her stories, slowly, like peeling layers off an old wound, about Earth, his training, the war, the fear, the loneliness. Vesha would listen quietly, occasionally nodding or placing a warm hand on his shoulder. She never judged, never interrupted, in return. She shared little pieces of her own story. She had once been part of a warrior tribe, fierce, proud, brutal, but she left after refusing to kill a helpless enemy child. To protect life is harder than to destroy, she said, but more honorable. James looked at her differently after that, not just as his savior, but as something deeper, someone who chose compassion over power in a galaxy built on cruelty. She had chosen kindness, and that kindness had saved him. One night, James woke from a nightmare, gasping, eyes wide. Vesha was there instantly, her arms wrapping around him, pulling him close. He didn't fight it, he just let himself rest against her chest. She made no sound, just held him tight and rocked slightly back and forth. Like a mother with a frightened child, he whispered, "I don't understand you." She replied softly, "You do not have to." And that night, he didn't dream of war. It was just before dawn. The cave was still, the fire down to glowing embers. James sat near the entrance, finally strong enough to walk on his own. Vesha was outside gathering roots beneath the silver-leaved trees. Everything seemed quiet, too quiet. Then came the sound, soft, almost like a whisper. But it wasn't the wind. It was footsteps, heavy, slow, and not hers. James backed deeper into the cave, his heart pounding. He grabbed the closest thing he could find, a long, curved bone. Vesha once used to cook. He crouched low, the way his training taught him. Then he saw them. 3 figures stepped into view, their armor dark and jagged like obsidian. They were taller than humans, but smaller than Vesha. Their eyes glowed faint orange, and strange tattoos marked their skin. Each one held a weapon, crude but deadly looking. James didn't understand their language, but their growls and hand signals were clear. They were looking for something or someone. The way they sniffed the air told him they were tracking scent. His scent. One of them reached the cave entrance and hissed. James held his breath, sweat running down his back, just as the figure stepped forward. A roar shook the trees. It wasn't a war cry. It was deeper, ancient hers. Vesha charged out of the brush, her body glimmering with morning mist. Her arms were bare, revealing battle scars long healed. She didn't wait for words. She moved like lightning. Her hand grabbed the nearest attacker by the throat and slammed him into the ground. The others roared and rushed her, weapons raised. James wanted to help, but he knew better than to get in her way. This was not the soft, humming healer who made him soup. This was Vesha the warrior. She spun, dodged, and struck, her strength terrifying. With one blow, she shattered a weapon. With another, she disarmed a blade from a clawed hand. Blood hit the leaves. The third attacker dropped to one knee and shouted something in their language. Maybe surrender, maybe warning. Vesha stood over them, breathing hard. "Leave," she growled, voice sharp like stone scraping steel. "You are not welcome here." The 3 looked at James, then at Vesha, and fled into the shadows without another sound. When they were gone, Vesha didn't speak. She turned to James and checked him quickly, her hand scanning his arms, chest, neck. "I'm okay," he whispered, voice trembling. "Are you?" She gave a slow nod, but her eyes looked distant. Troubled later that night, as they sat by the fire, James finally asked, "Who were they?" Vesha was silent for a long time, then said, "Old hunters from my tribe. They do not understand peace." "Why did they come here?" James asked. Vesha stared into the fire. "Because I broke their code. I saved you, a human. Instead of killing you, they think I'm weak now. And they want to finish what they started." James clenched his fists. "I don't want to put you in danger," Vesha looked at him sharply. "You did not put me in danger." "They did." He reached for her hand and held it tightly. "Thank you for protecting me." Vesha did not smile, but her grip tightened around his fingers. "You are mine to protect," she said firmly, "and I will not let anyone take you away." Outside, the forest was quiet again. But both of them knew this peace would not last forever. The danger had found them, and it would return. But next time, James thought, he wouldn't just watch. Next time, he would stand beside her. The firelight danced across the cave walls. James sat near it, rubbing his hands together as the night wind whispered through the cracks. Vesha stood across from him, her tall frame blocking most of the breeze. She was weaving something from soft blue Faberza blanket, maybe, or some kind of wrap. Her hands worked slowly, with care, like she was building something sacred. James watched her in silence. She had barely spoken since the attack 2 days ago. But she had been closer than ever. Every night she sat beside him, brushing his hair back, tucking furs tighter around him, humming in low tones until he slept. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to, that morning. She surprised him with a new robe woven from plant silk and lined with animal fur. It fit loosely, but warmly, and when he tried to thank her, she placed a finger gently on his lips. "Though thanks," she said. "You are mine, and this is what I do." James didn't know what she meant by mine. Not at first, not in the human sense, but in her culture, the meaning was deeper. Vesha began performing small rituals, gently marking his hands with colored dust, tying a strand of her braided hair to his wrist, singing her people's songs while preparing his food. When he finally asked, "What are you doing?" she looked him in the eyes and said, "I bond. You are no longer just guest. Or a rescued thing, you are kin." James blinked. "Unsure how to react, you mean?" "Like adopted," Vesha tilted her head. "Adopted. A strange word," she said slowly. "But yes, something like that." She rose and placed her large hand over his chest. "In my tribe, we take wounded ones into our arms. Those with no mothers, no tribe, no strength, we give them care, name, purpose, and in return, they are never left alone again." James didn't know what to say. Her touch was firm but warm. Her voice was not romantic. It was protective, it felt. "Safe. I was alone," he whispered. "Even before the war, I had no one." Vesha nodded as if she had known all along. "And now," she said softly, "you have me." Later that night, James had another nightmare. He screamed in his sleep, twisted in the furs, shaking, and before he could even wake fully, she was there. Vesha pulled him into her arms, wrapped his trembling body against her chest. Her heart beat strong and steady beneath his ear. Her voice hummed a song with no words. She whispered, "I am here. I will always be here." The next morning, James awoke still in her arms. He didn't pull away. He just looked up at her calm face and asked, "Why do you do this? Why care for someone like me?" Vesha answered without hesitation, "Because you remind me of my son. He was small like you. Soft-spoken, kind, and lost too soon." Tears filled James's eyes, but he nodded slowly, and in that moment, something changed. He was no longer a soldier hiding in a cave, no longer a wounded stray. He was hers now, not as a soldier or a project, but as family. From then on, she began to call him a name in her language, Isaval. He didn't know what it meant at first, but when he asked, she only smiled and said, "It means the one who was found." The cave had become his world. But outside, war still raged. James stood at the edge of the tree line, looking toward. The horizon smoke curled far in the distance, human flares. Not alien home was out there, but it no longer felt like home. "I have to go back," he said quietly. Vesha stood behind him, silent, unmoving. Her eyes, usually so calm, now flickered with something uncertain. Fear, maybe, or sorrow. James turned to face her. "They think I'm dead. My people, my side, they need to know I survived." Vesha looked down at him, her tall frame casting a long shadow. "You will be hunted again," she warned. "By enemies and maybe even your own." James nodded. "I know. But I won't let them hurt you. If I go back, I'll tell them about you. I'll tell them you saved me." Vesha didn't speak for a long while. Then she took a single step forward and pulled him close. "You are my kin," she said, voice trembling. "I will not cage you if your path calls you beyond the trees. I will walk with you." They packed quietly. She gave him dried roots, healing leaves, and a small carved totem made from crystal bark. "For protection," she said. "Not magic, just memory." James held it tightly. They moved through scorched valleys and over broken rivers. At night, They hid under branches while strange ships passed overhead, and during the day, James taught her human hand signals and warning calls. They moved like shadows together. Silent, prepared, finally, they saw it. The forward human outpost, a battered steel structure surrounded by drones and wire fences. Soldiers moved below, armored and alert. James raised his hands. "Don't shoot," he shouted. "I'm one of you." The response was immediate. Blasters pointed, alarms blared, voices shouted. Vesha stepped in front of James instinctively, fangs slightly bared, but he whispered, "Don't fight, just trust me." Moments later, soldiers swarmed them. They grabbed James, scanned him, confirmed his identity, but when they saw Vesha, everything changed. "Step back." One soldier barked, "That alien's armed." "She's not a threat," James said. Firmly, "She saved my life. She kept me alive when no one else came." The commanding officer arrived, a cold-faced woman with sharp eyes. "You're saying this? Creature helped you." James looked at Vesha, standing still, refusing to shrink before their judgment. "She didn't just help me," he said. "She raised me." There was silence, confusion, even mockery from some soldiers. But James didn't care. He reached for Vesha's hand and held it up for all to see. "I'm not going anywhere without her." The commander studied them for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "Take him in," she said to her men. "Decantum medical, full report." She looked at Vesha, eyes narrowing. "You don't try anything," James whispered to Vesha. "It's okay. Just stay close." And she did, that night. After medical checks and endless questions, they were given a small room in the corner of the compound. James lay on the narrow cot, but sleep wouldn't come. Vesha sat nearby, too tall for the furniture, her knees pulled in. "They fear me," she said softly. James nodded. "They don't understand you yet." "But they will." He reached out, and she took his hand. "We'll show them," he said, "that this bond, this family's real." And for the first time since leaving the cave, they both closed their eyes without fear, side by side. In the world that had once abandoned them, they had returned not alone, but as something stronger than war ever expected. The outpost didn't trust her, not at first. Every hallway Vesha walked down, soldiers stared, hands drifting near weapons. Children peeked from behind walls and whispered about the giant alien mommy. But she never reacted with anger. Only patience. James stayed close, always close. He translated her actions, her silence, her strength. He told the medics how she had used plants to heal his leg. He told the scientists how she built warmth in a frozen cave. And he told the commanders the one thing they didn't expect to hear: she loved me when no one else did. They scanned her, studied her, questioned her. But no machine could measure the quiet care she gave each night. No camera could record the way she checked the cot 3 times before sleeping herself. No file could describe how she held James when he dreamed of explosions. She was more than data. Eventually, one medic, an older man with tired eyes, approached James. He handed him a sealed badge. "Family of Honor," it read, "for those who saved lives beyond duty." James didn't say anything. He just walked. Vesha took her hand and pinned the badge to her shoulder. She looked at it, confused. "What is this?" she asked. James smiled. "Proof that you're one of us now." Months passed. Vesha was given a private space in the base wide, enough for her size. Lined with warm lights, she began helping injured soldiers, guiding orphans to safety shelters. No words, just actions. The same way she had once helped him. One day a young girl ran up to her and tugged her hand. "Are you really his mommy?" the child asked innocently. Vesha glanced at James, unsure what to say. James knelt beside the girl, smiled and whispered, "She may not look like one, but she is." The story of the human and the alien protectors spread. It reached other units, other camps, and even news networks. Some laughed, some scoffed, but others listened, because in a war where weapons failed and leaders lied, one truth stood clear. A 9-foot alien woman, once feared and exiled, chose love over violence, chose a broken human over pride, and that changed everything. Years later, after the war finally ended, statues were built, honoring the soldiers, the heroes, the fallen. But in a quiet garden near the edge of Earth's main peace center, there stood a simpler statue, a tall alien woman kneeling arms around a wounded man. No weapons, no medals. Just warmth carved in stone, the plaque read, "She cared like no one else could." And every child who walked by stopped to stare. Not at the scars, not at the size, but at the love that even war couldn't take.